Hi, everyone. Harry here to talk about the very predictable rush into federal court by Republicans in the immediate wake of the passage in California of Proposition 50, which constructs three new districts that they're certainly designed to elect Democratic representatives to the House and therefore parry the action by Texas to do the same with three Republican seats there in the lone state. It's just American as apple pie for any new enactment to be challenged in court the next day, so nothing dramatic there. The nature of the challenge. First, it's done by a kind of well-known activist Republican lawyer out here and has some plaintiffs as well. But the basic argument is that in drawing these lines, California was focused on race, and it's therefore a gerrymander based on race and therefore unconstitutional. Now, you may be thinking, wait a second, I thought under the part of the Voting Rights Act that survives Section 2, you're allowed to take some stock of it, of race. And indeed, if you draw a map that accidentally, or even if it's not your purpose, has the effect of diluting racial voting, that can be struck down under the Voting Rights Act. And that's exactly right. So what is happening here is this law firm is kind of rolling the dice on the Supreme Court argument that happened in the voting rights remaining important provision, which may be on the chopping block, certainly seemed that way after the argument. And there was some sentiment on the court, read Justice Thomas in particular, for saying that Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act is unconstitutional because any consideration of race in the gerrymandering or line drawing process is unconstitutional. The heart of the court and the putative opinion that looks like it will emerge will be the sort of twin of Shelby versus Holder, and the court just saying, it's long enough, and we don't think it's right or meet to do it any longer. But there will certainly, or that's the kind of wager that the challengers are making, be some statements about the use of race at all. Currently, the law is you can use race, but you need to make a determination. And this, by the way, this is for the legislative process of drawing a new map after a census. So the Prop 50, of course, is a popular initiative passed by the people and not subject exactly to the same. It's not the same process, so it won't be clear. That'll be part of what will happen going forward. That'll be part of the same law. The short defense of this is the current law for sure. This is what's happening all over the country. So maybe the Supreme Court says down the line that everybody's got to change their practices. That would have very far-reaching implications way beyond California. But we're doing it by the book, as the book currently reads. The one kind of retort that's implicit in the lawsuit is to say, even though it's currently permitted in theory, and this is when a state draws those lines again, but you're supposed to be able to proffer evidence that a minority would not elect its preferred candidates due to the concerted opposition of voters, of white voters. So the classic instance that calls for, under current law, some kind of change to that's specifically race conscious, that gives rise to the likely election of a minority representative, is the creation of a so-called majority minority districts. So rather than taking a state, you can imagine how this would happen with the crazy line drawing that the Supreme Court says, oh, we just can't judge. It's all political process. But think of a state with, say, 30% African Americans that has, say, 10 districts. You can imagine drawing 10 very carefully crafted chunks within the state, each one of which has pretty close to that 70-30. It'll never be completely possible because the pockets of population and of habitation by, different groups will vary in the state. But trying to draw crazy lines so that everyone is close to the default or the fallback percentage in the state of 60-70% white. So that's exactly what's against the law now. And so California, I think, will be able to say we complied with how things stand now. And but the challenger's saying first, you haven't come forward with evidence that but for this, you wouldn't be able to elect minorities. I think that's true. Certainly, it's not part of Proposition 50. We'll see how it's defended in court. But second, as I say, this goes to court now, and I think California is, going to say we're following the law, and the challengers are going to hope for the kind of opinion that they can say before this has been fully decided. Stop the music, and we've just heard from the Supreme Court now, reconsider. Now, my best guess, the Supreme Court often has to decide when it adjudicates cases how they should apply going forward and even sometimes going backwards. And it would so upend the entire system in the country that I think an opinion that comes out, as this one probably will in 2026, to have it apply to the midterms would be friggin' crazy and chaotic and virtually, I'd say, impossible even. States would have to scramble. We have, I think several dozen majority minority districts that it might be striking down. So my best guess is this gamble by the plaintiffs here, Republicans, won't succeed even if the Supreme Court comes out with an opinion essentially slashing Section 2 from the books. But that's the idea. Now, it's interesting to note how Gavin Newsom, who's become identified with this successful initiative, is he is affecting insouciance would be an understatement. This is how he puts it about the lawsuit. I mentioned it was from a well-known Republican activist, and indeed, Harmeet Dillon. It's her law firm. We haven't reviewed the lawsuit, but if it's from the California Republican Party and Harmeet Dillon's law firm, it's going to fail, he said on Wednesday on X. And, it's the fact of the lawsuit, no surprise, followed as day from night on any kind of controversial new law. But likewise, the sort of battle it engenders that, of course, is framed in legal terms, but is basically political. Trump, in fact, does a social media post that says we're going to challenge them. And he didn't even mention race. Here's what he said. Without evidence, of course, as always. The California ballot measure was rigged, and that the mail ballot system, which he always rails against, it goes much more for Democrats, working people who, need the convenience of mail, was under very serious legal and criminal review. So that's basically saber rattling about some kind of suggestion that state officials who actually execute law calling for mail-in ballots would face criminal charges. It would be such an outlandish bad joke, except we have seen him commandeer the Justice Department and force them to bring meritless criminal charges. So it's actually a kind of saber rattling that, as he has the whole DOJ kind of constituted, you got to think about, worry about, and you got to imagine that election officials, not to mention the sort of, gentle, patriotic retirees who, staff state elections and the like, this is meant to be to cow people, intimidate them, make people across the country think they better call ties for Republicans. It's all really revolting. And it's also, it's part and parcel, it seems to me. I've said this again and again, but it's the ball we have to keep our eye on. So many of the things he's doing. This includes, by the way, the military stuff in Illinois. The main worry there is the court green lights with deference some claim of emergency powers based on complete crap fiction of rebellion or inability of the law enforcement to handle the situation. That would be really bad in itself, but it would be, to my view, much worse because it would point toward his ability to try to use emergency powers as he will, including, and he's made it so clear, in the elections. Think of a National Guard at every precinct. Anyway, so that's the notion here with that final tagline about mail-in voting being criminal. A complete idiotic, asinine thing to say, but the idiotic and the asinine have in fact come to fruition, if not legal fruition, in Trump's Justice Department and Trump's America in recent weeks. So vigilance is required. In the meantime, this suit goes forward. Probably California is safe. The landscape might change depending on what the court does with the Voting Rights Act case, but not in a way, my best guess anyway, that would require states to scramble and get things in order for the 2026 midterms, which I think go ahead on the current maps, including Texas, and presuming California's is upheld, this new Prop 50 map that adds 3 likely Democratic seats. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.